Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Rslash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, what's Oh-See-Arrah? His computer. The non-working keyboard and character limits. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. What's Oh-See-Arrah? A few years ago, I worked for a document processing company where most employees received scanned typed documents and read the document while manually typing it into a system. One day, while troubleshooting Adobe on a PC, I asked the user if they needed the Oh-See-Arrah button added back. This is a 20 years veteran of the company who has been in the same department the entire time. $Me, Adobe is fixed for now, would you like me to add the Oh-See-Arrah button back? $User, Oh-See-Arrah? Wah. $Me, yes. The process which turns a scanned typed document into one where the text can be copied and pasted into another program. $User, silence, gears turning, trying to calculate how much time they have wasted not using this feature. More gears turning, realizing no one in the department uses this, since this user trains all other users. $User, can you show me how this works? I proceed to show the process and have the user go through it a few times so they can train others. After this call, I had to reflect for a while on what had just transpired. Did I just get some people fired? Oh no, I said with a clamoring sound, dropping my stapler on the cold, snowy ground. To all a good night, may Oh-See-Arrah always treat you right. P.S. Happy Hanukkah, Adam Sandler. I have absolutely no doubt there are hundreds, thousands, probably tens of thousands of jobs out there which can be replaced with not even Oh-See-Arrah, but just Ctrl-C, V, F and H. Oh-See-Arrah's a less obvious feature, so I can't even blame them that much. I took an entry-level accountancy course while searching for my first job in 2012. Nothing too taxing, some Excel and Access work. What was taxing was the instructor's attitude to learning. If you wanted to copy something from cell to cell, you must go to the Edit menu and click Copy, then go to the destination cell, go to the Edit menu and click Paste. We were told in no uncertain terms that if we were seen using hotkeys in the exam, we would be failed because, and I quote, hotkeys are unreliable. Ditto VBA in Excel. That shows once again that experience is worthless at first. You can do things wrong for 20 years. Snag is stuff changes, and a comparatively small change may totally blindside you with an out-of-context error. You're locked into a process, cannot see such change. Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. If you practice something wrong, you'll just end up being really good at doing that thing wrong. This reminds me of the time many years ago, in the office copy room where they just gotten a fancy new MFD copier/printer. Our office location was remote to the main hub of the company, so when we got the device, we got zero notice of it, and received no training on it. It just showed up one day. I was still pretty new to the company, while the admin assistant I worked with had been there for many years, and I'd already learned that she was the person who could either answer any question or quickly route you to the person that knew the answer. Technology was not her forte, however, so one day when I came upon her making multiple copies, one at a time, of a multi-page document, and creating sorted piles with the intention of stapling them at the end, I mentioned that the new device had some features she might like. I proceeded to walk her through the touchscreen menu of the MFD, and within a few minutes her document was copied, single-sided to double-sided, collated and stapled using the fancy new machine. The delight on her face was at first luminous, but then I could see in her eyes the realization she was having about the downstream impact this device was going to have. And over time, the pool of admins went from 10 down to 2 for the whole office. So now, instead of spending 10 minutes hand copying each document, each employee can spend 12 trying to fix all the weird spacing and formatting issues before giving up and copying by hand. Ha ha ha, so true. The Adobe Oh-See-Arrah works well in some very certain types of documents, but for some weirdly formatted stuff it just fails terribly. True. I had a job one summer cleaning up CAD drawings that had been run through an auto-conversion process. I eventually gave up and just redrew the documents myself. Fortunately, they were wiring harnesses, so essentially entirely standard elements with some text added. At least they embraced the change and did not drag their feet saying, "But we always did it this way." Would you? Given the choice between click a button and type 500 pages of text by hand, I'll take the button every time. I just might not mention to my boss that my day is now clicking one button and then screwing around on Reddit for 8 hours. I once set up some inbox roles for an intern to automatically manage thousands of survey response emails, sorting them into folders by survey. Halfway through the process, I began to wonder if the sole purpose of the internship was to sort the emails, and whether I was making her redundant. Which is silly, of course. I'm sure they found something more useful and interesting for her to do with her time. Bwahahahahahahahahaha. Couple years back, I took on a very entry-level type job. I've been doing tech work for 20 years or so, real basic first-line support type stuff, for rubbish money. But I'd been recently made redundant from somewhere as a DevOps engineer, and this place was literally a 3-minute walk from my front door. Some money is better than no money. What was a bit weird is the spec and interview had a heavy focus on SQL. They were delighted to have me. They were getting a lot of tech for what they were paying, but I made it very clear it would probably only be for a couple of months. As it turned out, the primary responsibility of this role was in fact to run SQL reports for people on demand. "Hey Nesbla, can you please run a report on inventory for this date range including X and excluding Y?" Now, I neither consider myself a developer or a SQL guru or anything, but this was really simple stuff. After about a week, I just decided to build a very rudimentary front end and a bunch of stored procedures so these folks could plumb in the data ranges and some of the variables and just run it themselves. It took me all of about another week to cover 95% of their use cases. The bosses were floored. "We've been paying someone a salary to do it this way for about 10 years now." I had a 6-month contract with them, but felt a bit weird taking their money to largely sit there doing very little unless a mouse needed replacing or some such. Ended up suggesting it might just be better if they paid me a chunk of money for the system I'd created. I'd offer support for a year, and if they needed someone to come on site and doing any basic first-line support, they could just pay me hourly for it. I was happy. 2 weeks of work got me a chunk of change to pay my rent while I was waiting to start another DevOps job. They were happy. They could run whatever report they wanted themselves and save themselves a, albeit small, chunk of salary expenditure. I was more amused that the fella I replaced hadn't taken the time to do some rudimentary automation around the job. Maybe he had and just did quiet like. Or that they hadn't shelled out for SSRS or Power BI or some such, which would have looked much prettier than the thing I cobbled together. Imagine paying Adobe their blood money for Pro, which is expensive, and not using many of their features. You've just described 75% of the Adobe users at my workplace. Once upon a time, there was a simple add-in from Adobe for Reader to do OCR. Both free. Imagine being the guy who implemented a speech-to-text program in a hospital which could do full grammar and punctuation with special medical wording. With a department of over 100 users who did nothing but writing down the recordings of doctors into written text. It wasn't me, but you shouldn't do this, especially if all those people know you. It's *CKs, but it's progress, and that progress is coming for our jobs soon. Old company, I was at paid consultants to write a copy as path tool for Windows because a department didn't know it existed. When they tried to deploy it to my department, I'm not IT, and a bunch of us pointed out that it already exists standard in Windows, some senior people blew their tops. His computer. An elderly gentleman had his PC set up in a sort of shed outside. It was insulated, carpet on the walls, warm and generally a nice place, but full of tools, half-finished projects, self-made shelves, you know the drill. An old guy doing old guy stuff. Anyway, his PC had fallen 5 feet from a shelf it was on, taking the monitor with it. The case was dented, the motherboard had snapped in half, the CPU socket and its heatsink had ripped free of its retaining screws, and the monitor was cracked clean across the screen. A competitor had got there first, but said it needed replacing, it couldn't be fixed. The old guy didn't want that. As the old gentleman berated the incompetence of anyone who couldn't just hammer it back into shape, I asked if I could take it with me and come back in a few days. It needed some work in the workshop. He was happy with this. He was just happy to have someone who knew what he was doing handle it. I took it back, for days later, fully working. All the guy's files were there, his desktop background of his granddaughter was there, his silly screensavers and weird desktop icon positions. All there. The competitor called me how the $%. Did you fix that? He said it looks the same through the side window, that it always did. He even said you got the cracks out of his monitor. I brushed off the competitor. We drank together sometimes, but I didn't agree with his upsell and heavy margins. We're in a deprived area, we need to help, not hurt. The hard disk had survived, so I replaced the motherboard, setting its NIC to max spoof and BIOS, to get Win 7 Home Premium to not need reactivation. The CPU survived, so did the heatsink. Replaced the PSU which had been hammered, and bought an identical monitor. eBay got me an identical case side panel to fix his smashed acrylic window. Finally, the monitor was a fairly common 21-inch console, cheap as chips. Okay, how much did you charge for all that? £600. 600? He could have bought a new computer for that. That's not what he wanted though. He wanted his computer. I gave it him. That's not what he wanted though. He wanted his computer. I gave it to him. Theseus Statement of the Year. This is what it's all about. The man knew what he wanted and this person gave it to him for an agreed upon price. This is how all business should be done. Theseus Statement of the Year. Nice. Berated the incompetence of anyone who couldn't just hammer it back into shape. Pardon me, sir, but can you demonstrate how to hammer a sheet of window glass back into shape? You need to lay it flat and hammer very fast, reaching the glass's melting point in the process. And technically you gave him a new computer. He's got a new monitor, a new MOBO, and a new power supply. I imagine you could have saved him some dollars by going with a brand new computer, but some people are set in their ways. They want things to be familiar. Bravo to you for recognizing that and addressing that. He actually did. The CPU survived. I was trying to tell how the damage was, but wasn't reused. As I recall, it was a Hewlett-Packard machine with a Core i5-2400, and I replaced it with a Core i5-4670 with double the RAM. I mean, recovery/copying of HDD will also cost something if he gets a new PC, so reusing the HDD is much better. The case. If my SSD dies, I'd need at least 1 week to my setup back. Giving the customer what they want is always a good business model. But then you need to be able to tell what the customer actually wants, not just do what he thinks he wants. It's a fine line between what the customer wants and what the customer needs. Worked in a vape shop where I used this. Dude would come in wanting exactly what his friend had. After a few questions, it was clear that what dude wanted is not what dude needed. Talking dude down to the lower priced item that he needed always had the customer come back in a couple of weeks telling me I was right, and I would make far more money from that customer over the course of a year than I would have made just selling dude what dude wanted. You're the stuff real techs are made of. I would hope you suggested some sort of hold downs for the case and monitor, so there is no chance of a repeat. He may not get so lucky if there is a next time. I'm 100% that guy, and I even use computers in my work all the time, scan tools, programming. I buy older high-mileage vehicles that are super clean, but need a major component, and then build it the way I want it. I have 3 of the exact same coffee cups, 1 to use and 2 in case they break irreparably. As a professional, I fully understand when a professional says it's not worth it or feasible, but there is also getting what I want and usually an in-between that pleases me regardless of the actual cost/value. I recently heard from a friend, of course you have a backup Wi-Fi router. Technically I have two backups, since I just upgraded. The oldest backup never left the box. Nice to see you have N+2 resilience for your cup. This reminds me of the time when my goldfish died, so I flushed him down the toilet, but he was back in his bowl when I got home from school that day. Glad he was okay after all. That's not what he wanted though. He wanted his computer. I gave it him. Sniff, got a little tear in my eye from that line. You're a good tech/you/haddix. This is excellent work. Just curious, how did you get the MAC address of the old motherboard's NIC if the board had snapped in half? Well, the MAC address should be stamped on the actual part/piece, so he most likely just read it off the board itself. This is how you win repeat trade. I've been trying to get my hands on an old man in a shed contract for years. Those things are like gold. The non-working keyboard and character limits. Let me preface this with I started my current job 5 months ago, and I am still learning all the third-party systems. A lot of our users are working from home today. I live up in Maine and we have some decent ice going. Actors. $Me Danuan KBH, the intrepid sys and network admin for a regional health facility. $FPER user. And to be honest, the users at this business are all unicorns. They are friendly, they listen, they joke with us. $FPE calls in, we go through how I am her favorite, and she really appreciates IT, especially this time of year. My keyboard doesn't type anymore. I was typing in info to a case, and it just stopped. I know she has a wireless keyboard, so I ask the obvious, did you try new batteries? $FPE says no, because the keyboard on my laptop won't type anymore either. Can you move the mouse around? Maybe your laptop is just locked up? I ask reasonably. No, I can move the mouse. Maybe I just hit a key combo that caused the keyboards to not work, $FPE asks in earnest curiosity. I am not aware of any combo that would do that, honestly. Let's do this, reboot the laptop and try again. Let me know how it goes. Why is it I did not think of that before I call, $FPE says with a smile. You know your IT folks. If we are not allowed to say did you turn it off and back on, at least once a day we get depressed. We go ahead and hang up. No reason to sit on the phone as I am positive this will fix it. I get an email from $FPE not 10 minutes later that says, so, I told you I was working on cases. Apparently, I had filled the text box and was not allowed to add more characters. Instead of the system telling me that, it just did not allow me to add more information, i.e., I perceived that my laptop and keyboard stopped working. Might be good for you to know when other people's brains stop working such as mine did. I love our users. That seems like an odd feature instead of highlighting the text box. Oh well. Most text boxes are like this. Once you hit the limit they just silently eat your input. It takes work to add in a feature to complain at the user that the text box is full. This is an undocumented feature that they charge more for you to have. What a nice unicorn. In all seriousness, these are the best users I have been around. Instagram does this for its comments box and stories. It will just stop accepting characters after a certain point. It won't tell you, it will just stop. Also, what a great unicorn user. The idea about the key combination is a genuinely interesting question, and I'm happy to hear that they are at least thinking about stuff. To be fair, there is often a key to disable the trackpad, so something to disable the keyboard isn't too far-fetched. However, as a power user, I also suspect the OS would never implement such a feature, since the keyboard is so fundamental to the computer. That being said, apparently the Windows mouse driver is more stable than the keyboard driver. So lazy programming where they didn't either put a tag below the box that says limit X characters or actual program an error message if they go over the limit. Good that your users are actually thinking, and don't just dump on IT for things you can't control. I don't work tech support, but I like your users. I love users like that. Have had a few over the years, and I always treasure them. They get the extra special support tier, where they can put in a ticket after calling me for help. I want your users instead of mine. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.